Jokiel. I remembered to say my name this morning, and I also have my tag on, which is like, that's really growing up for me. I tend to forget those things. I want to choose a welcome from our hymnal. It's written by Richard S. Gilbert. Pastor Gilbert has written a lot of material for education in Unitarian churches, and he contributed a great deal of material to the seminar series that is called Build Your Own Philosophy, Build Your Own Religion. And in admiration of his contributions, I have this. He calls it, "We bid you welcome. We bid you welcome, who come with weary spirit seeking rest. We come with troubles that are too much with you, who come hurt and afraid. We bid you welcome, who come with hope in your heart, who come with anticipation in your step, who come proud and joyous. We bid you welcome, who are seekers of a new faith. We come to probe and explore and come to learn. We bid you welcome, who enter this hall as a homecoming, who have found room here for your spirit. We find in this people a family. Whoever you are, whatever you are, wherever you are on your journey, we bid you welcome." Are there any announcements? Going on with that. If someone could like the chalice, I have some words to go with that. This is from one of my heroes, Albert Schweitzer. And I have a distant connection with Albert Schweitzer in that one of my organ instructors was a student of Albert Schweitzer, so I shook the hand that shook, so to speak. At times, our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us. And for opening words, from Unitarian pastor, still living and working, James Philip Blake. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. And that is a quotation from a larger covenant that he and his congregation adopted several years ago. Okay, let's go to hymn number 10 in your book. And that is Immortal Love. Words are from poet John Greenleaf Whittier. And Whittier was a Quaker and an abolitionist in New England, and gave us lots of wonderful words and writings. And Carly, do we do two verses? Okay.
Whatever you want.
Okay, well, if you would play one verse as an introduction, and then we'll sing two. Thank you. children's moment.
Good morning. So today I have a story that I think we actually may have heard before, so this might not be our first hearing, but it's called Be Kind, and it's by Pat Zyglo Miller, illustrated by Jen Hill, so if you guys can see. All right. Tamisha spilled grape juice yesterday. Poor Tamisha, it's no fun. She spilled it all over her new dress, and everyone laughed, and I almost did too, but my mom tells me to always be kind. So I tried. I don't think it worked. I said, "Purple is my favorite color." Well, she ran into the hall instead of smiling. And when she came back, snack time was over, and she had put on her art dress, her art smock, instead of her dress, and she looked very sad. Well, I almost told her that art was my favorite class, but I didn't want her to leave again. So I painted purple splotches and added some green until I had a bunch of beautiful violets. Should I have handed her my napkin, or maybe let her borrow my sweatshirt? Or spilled my juice so everyone stared at me instead? Oh, look at her covered with juice. I don't know, I would have stared if she was covered with juice all over her head too. Well, what does it mean to be kind anyway? Maybe it's giving, like making cookies for Mr. Rinaldi who lives alone. Or letting someone with smaller feet have my too tight shoes. Maybe it's helping, like putting our dirty dishes in the sink. Someone I know at my house needs to do that. Or cleaning up after Otis, our class guinea pig. He's a little bit of a messy eater. See, she put a little napkin over his little chest so he would not be so messy. Do you think it worked? Maybe it's paying attention, like telling Desmond I like his blue boots, or asking the new girl to be my partner, or listening to Aunt Franny's stories, even the ones I've heard before. Being kind should be easy, like throwing away a wrapper, or recycling a bottle, or saying thank you or bless you. My mom says the quickest way to be kind is to use people's names. Hi, Carla. What's up, Omar? Good afternoon, Grandpa Mendelson. Being kind can be hard, too, even when you know what to do. Teaching someone something I'm good at is tricky. And sticking up for someone when other kids aren't kind is really hard. Maybe I can't solve Tanisha's grape juice problem. Maybe all I can do is sit by her in art class and paint this picture for her, because I know she likes purple too. Maybe I can only do small things, but my small things might join the other small things people do, and together they could grow into something big. Something really big, so big that kindness spills out of our school, spreads throughout the streets, travels across the country, and all the way around the whole world. Right back to Tanisha and me, so we can be kind, again and again and again. What do you think? Do you think Tanisha liked the picture? Yeah. Alrighty. Oh look, she put it up on her wall. 2 simple words.
join in hymn number 8, Mother Spirit, Father Spirit. I don't know if we physically collect an offering here right now or whether it's, okay, you do, so. While that's going around, I want to tell you a little bit about hymn number 8 that we are about to sing. It was written by somebody that I admire very much, and that is Norbert Kapek, who was raised as a Baptist minister in Czechoslovakia when he visited a Unitarian church in East Orange, New Jersey in the 1920s. He found that his beliefs more closely resembled those of Unitarianism, and returning to his native land, he founded the Unitarian Church in Prague, where he served as a minister for many years. He created the Flower Communion that we celebrate here every year. He was killed at Dachau concentration camp in 1942 for speaking out against the Nazi persecution. His words for this song were translated many times, and the tune, he wrote the tune himself. He was very musical, so he wrote the tune and the words, and out of admiration for Deepak Murrow, I want to sing the entire song. Okay, one verse intro. Love the songs in our hymnal. An introduction to today's talk. This, I believe, is an ongoing but intermittent series introduced here at UUFP by Allan Pallay. It was inspired by the series of the same name, begun by news journalist Edward R. Murrow. In his long and international career, he met many people of differing backgrounds and started asking them for brief statements about their beliefs. He asked that for his radio and TV shows, and he eventually compiled hundreds of contributions, and several of them have been compiled into books. I see a through line from that to the TED Talks, to the brief but spectacular features on PBS NewsHour, to our own conversations here at the Fellowship. Some of the best ideas of my life I have heard from folks here, both in formal presentations and in informal discussions. Perhaps those are a main reason of what has kept me drawn to the fellowship for over 35 years. Choosing the order of the things I believe was hard. Part of me just wanted to blurt it all out at once. One suggestion of most important to me only made it harder. But I finally made the decisions, and I'm beginning with a statement that I usually put at the end of my presentations, and that is, educate yourself. I don't know whether you're like me, but I'm about to be 76, and when I was in high school, the only thing I was taught from K through 12 about slavery was that Lincoln ended it. Native Americans weren't even mentioned, except in passing at Thanksgiving, and for the help that Pocahontas. I attended a lecture done by my niece Rachel. She's an Episcopalian rector, and at the time she was a hospital chaplain in Augusta, Maine. She was invited to give a lecture at Colby College in Waterville, Maine. I went up for it, and at the bookstore at Colby College, I found a book called Lies My Teacher Told Me. Everything your American history textbook got wrong. I purchased it immediately. It was written by the recently deceased historian James Lowen, who lived from 1942 to 2021. There are 3 editions in print, but they're very similar. Whichever one you might find and come by will be fine. The first was published in 1995, and he examined the 12 most commonly used high school history texts in the United States. I noticed that almost all of these were printed by large, highly respected publishers like Houghton Mifflin, who, in my opinion, should have known better. The second edition was expanded to include 5 more textbooks and a revised edition of one in the first, and his third edition only added an introduction and preface. When he passed away, he was working on a book titled The Age of Alternate Facts. Very timely. Some examples of what he pointed out in any of the books. Columbus did not discover America. The first Thanksgiving in 1610 with the surviving Mayflower Pilgrims, who were the first group of Puritans to arrive. I always got them confused. The Thanksgiving between them and the Native Americans was not what it's cracked up to be, and later Thanksgivings, which came fairly soon after that, were celebrations of how the European Americans had defeated Native Americans in various battles. The Puritans, who felt that separation from the Anglican Church, from the Catholic Church, had not gone far enough, came here by the thousands, starting a few years after the Mayflower landing and ending in about 1640. They came for religious freedom, but did they give it to anybody else? No, and they did not even tolerate other religions. Pocahontas and Sacagawea have very different histories from the ones that textbooks infer. When I was taking some classes on teaching at Alvernia, I went to the one that was about teaching history. The instructors were a married couple who started out by saying that they were unabashed patriots. I bristled a little bit already. At some point, I asked them about the Thanksgiving myth. They defended it, and at a break, 2 or 3 participants came up to me quietly. One lady actually snuck up behind my chair in the last row so she couldn't be seen. And she said that she agreed with me, but she was afraid to say anything to her children's teacher when they had the little Thanksgiving project at school. And as many of you might remember, we dressed up like Indians or pilgrims to celebrate that first Thanksgiving. Perhaps the most telling thing for today is that civics is not taught in all United States high schools. The emphasis on science, technology, engineering, and math, STEM, has largely overshadowed history, civics, and literature in all our curricula. Interestingly, there's a proposal before the Pennsylvania legislature to include passing a civics test in order to graduate high school. I hope it passes. The memo supporting edition of this requirement noted that a 2019 survey conducted by the University of Pennsylvania's Annenberg Public Policy Center revealed the students' lack of knowledge, and the survey also alarmingly noted that only 39% of the adults surveyed could identify at least one of the three main branches of government. So at the present time, we have a lot of uneducated on history and government students graduating from high school, and if people don't go on to take any further education that would focus on history, that's where their knowledge of it will end. So my advice from that is check with your local high school and see if they're offering civics or problems of democracy or some related topic. Okay, my second big emphasis, my second belief here, is the right to choose. Yay, Kansas, all right? I put this in my second slot because it is timely. I've always been a fan of the right to choose. My overview of it is that birth control medications should be in the water supply, and that when a person wants to become pregnant, they take an antidote, and that way you know that every child is wanted. As I was growing up, my family gave me no information about sex. I don't know if anybody else is old enough to be in that category, but zip, zero, none. Fortunately, my mother did warn me in time about having periods. She warned me when I was 10, but only so that I would know not to be scared when it happened. She made no connection between that and pregnancy, and rather, she framed it as just part of growing older. I know of people who were not even given that much information, and they thought they were dying when it started. At age 12, I read a very thorough discussion about right to choose in one of the national magazines. I didn't know what the words meant, but I deduced from the meaning and context of the article. I decided then and there that I was an advocate for choice. At about age 14, I realized there were lots of things I didn't know about sex, and that no one was going to tell me. So I went to the Harrisburg Public Library and checked out an early and very large publication by Allan Frank Gutenmacher, a hero of mine. He was the first president of Planned Parenthood. Thank goodness I read it. I learned how people become pregnant and also how to avoid pregnancy. At age 22, I got my first job out of college, and that was as a caseworker at the now closed Hamburg Center. And that was in 1968. At about that time, Hamburg was a state facility for multiply handicapped individuals with severe developmental disability. That means they couldn't walk, talk, use their limbs, or perform any self-care whatsoever. Before that, I had only heard the term birth defects in the ads for the March of Dimes, contribute to the March of Dimes to prevent birth defects. To see hundreds of people in one place suffering from these permanent conditions was a sudden awakening, and it reinforced my belief in choice. I sent a letter to the editor of the Reading Eagle. Usually my letters are printed. This one hasn't come out yet, but it might be. They called to confirm who I was, and I asked if it would be published, and the editor said, probably. Here it is, to the editor. No laws or court decisions ever have or ever will prevent unwanted pregnancy. I repeat, no laws or court decisions ever have or ever will prevent unwanted pregnancy. Every child should be wanted. Obviously, my marching in Washington, D.C. 50 years ago in favor of choice did not have lasting success. We are now back in the Middle Ages. Not only will physicians and women a few weeks pregnant become felons and be jailed, but birth control and reliable information about birth control will soon disappear. You know what the rhythm method is called? And you?
Back to the left.
Pregnancy, right? The Supreme Court is now forcing pregnancy. Women will now die. I repeat, women will now die. At the time I submitted the letter, I wasn't clever enough to say that the Supreme Court and many state legislatures are forcing pregnancy, and what's another word for forced pregnancy? That is rape. And they have no business invading our bedrooms or our doctor's offices. It's also ironic that at this time of the United States in general wanting more babies, that Our land is burning down. People are very poor. There's not enough food. We have so many people without homes. And the top of the irony is we don't have enough baby formula. That crisis has not been solved yet. So putting all of the restrictions that are happening in the air together, it doesn't seem like the right time either. Okay, enough on that. My third topic is the Gaia theory. In the 1970s, the Gaia theory was promulgated by British scientist James Lovelock and American biologist Lynn Margulis. The theory puts forth that the entire Earth is one complete self-regulating organism that created and maintained conditions for life on itself. I personally never thought that it wasn't, and I was rather surprised to see that there was a lot of publicity given to the idea that it was one organism. I was very happy to know that other people thought so, but I thought it was obvious and that lots of people felt the same way. Talk about naivety. Lovelock and Margulis went on to say that human activity had thrown the system dangerously out of kilter. James Lovelock only died a few days ago at the age of 103, and he died on his birthday of that day. He was born and raised in London. He studied chemistry, medicine, biophysics in the UK and in the US. He worked during the 1960s on NASA's Moon and Mars programs and at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California. But he spent much of his career as an independent science working outside of larger scientific institutions. His contributions to environmental science included developing a highly sensitive electron capture detector to measure ozone-depleting chlorofluorocarbons in the atmosphere, as well as pollutants in the air, soil, and water. A note on Lynn Margulis, the microbiologist. Remember in high school science, in biology, we had divisions of plants and animals. And then we got down to the end of what at the time, for a long time, were only two divisions. There were some small microorganisms that fit both or none of the categories. And of course, with the arrival of the electron microscope and other things, more can be found out about them. And now if you look at a high school textbook for biology, it doesn't look at all like what a lot of us remembered. However, when Lynn Margulis submitted her first papers about organisms that were both or neither of these things, it was rejected by, are you ready, 15 publishers. And one of the publishers wrote back to her and said, "Your work is garbage. Don't ever submit anything else to us ever again." But she kept on going, which is amazing perseverance. And she, together with Lovelock, were able to give credence to the Gaia theory. Lovelock, shortly before he died, said, "Biosphere and I are both in the last 1% of our lives." He told that to the Guardian newspaper in London. And initially dismissed by many scientists, the Gaia theory became influential as concern about humanity's impact on the planet grew, not least because of its power as a metaphor, because Gaia is the Greek goddess of the earth. Another topic that I'm sure won't surprise you is that music is healing. It's been about 8 years since I gave a talk up front here about music, and I've learned more since then. I have to thank John Dreesen for sending me loyally all the latest research in music therapy. I must comment though that I think the term music therapy is redundant. Music is therapy, full stop. A couple of things I've learned since the last time I talked with you is that there are two little areas deep in our brains that connect words to pitches. Who would have thought? Also, the edges of those particular cells are more robust and live longer than most of the cells in our body. Their edges do not fray like most cells do over time. And as a demonstration of that, I'll start to sing along. I'll start to sing a song. Sing with me if you can. Ready? Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. I looked over Jordan, and what did I see? Coming for to carry me home. A band of angels coming after me, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. I have never stepped into a group and started singing that song that the entire group could not start to sing with me. And I think it's a very living example of the memory that's kicked out when you start a song. If the pitches and the words have been learned together, it just flows. Plus that is fun, it's rewarding, and it gets the endorphins going. Very healthy. From a very recent conversation with a speech therapist, I learned that speech therapists believe that singing helps to reclaim lost speech, both by helping to breathe more deeply and to control the breath for use. Even just listening to the words in a song helps stroke victims track what their speech centers should be doing. Music creates emotional satisfaction, which helps to keep us healthy. Let's let Carly keep us healthy. I asked her to play the beautiful meditation from Thais by Jules Massenet. He lived from 1842 to 1912 and was a composition instructor at the Paris Conservatory. He also wrote tons and tons of material. His output was unmeasurable. Carly, please. I don't think there's anybody here who didn't feel better after hearing that. Thank you so much, Carly. It was a pleasure to have a good excuse to ask for that to be played. I have a few more things that I believe that I'll share with you. And one of these are 2 lessons that I learned from a wonderful supervisor I had in the days that I worked at Allentown State Hospital. His name was Josh Epstein. Josh gave us, in his large department, he very easily signed vouchers for us to go to any seminar we wanted to attend, and that was through the social services department. He was such a believer in education, harks back to my first topic, that he wanted us to go everywhere and anywhere to learn whatever we wanted to. He would sign a petition, he would sign a release for the money, and he would sign out a state car for us to use. One of the seminars I went to was at the Hotel Bethlehem, and it was presented by 2 plainclothes nuns. I didn't even know there were plainclothes nuns, who talked about what to say to people with cancer. Now at the time, to get their historical perspective, everybody was quite shy about talking to people who had cancer and about not telling them, for one thing. But what should I say? Well, the magical answer to that is, it doesn't matter what you say. Just be there. Say anything. Listen. The important part is that you are there. And that has helped me in a lot of situations in the years since I attended that. Josh also paid for us to go to a seminar that was held at what used to be the Eastern Diagnostic and Testing Center in Philadelphia, and it was on sexuality. And it was there that I learned that sexuality is a spectrum. It is not an A or B phenomenon, and that was back in 1974, and that has helped me incredibly since the time. Josh is with the angels now, but thank you, Josh. I wanted to share some thoughts on prayer. I'm a praying Unitarian. I believe that somewhere out there is some energy that can be shared, either received or sent to others. I address my prayers to the God of love somewhere in the universe. And I love the scripture from Matthew chapter 6, verse 6, that says, "But when you pray, go into your room and shut the door and pray to your Father who is in secret, and your Father who is in secret will hear you." And so that gives me confidence. But I think the strongest thing about prayer is that if you ask someone to pray for you, or they ask you to pray for them, it's probably the highest compliment that you can give. It tells them that you are caring for each other, and just that thought is powerful medicine. I try to always pray, especially for someone who asks me to. And I must throw in that my very agnostic son says that he doesn't mind if other people pray for him. He once said I could use all the prayers I could get. Not that he was about to give them, but he was quite receptive to it. Next point is a lesson from Michelangelo. Did anybody else here go to the New York World's Fair of 1964 to 1905? It was in Flushing Meadows, Queens. Okay, John. Did you go through the Vatican exhibit of the Pietà? Wow. When you go home, look up a picture of the Pietà. For me and my mother, it was positively gripping. We made several passes through the exhibit, which had a very clever moving elevator or escalator floor. There were like maybe 5 levels. And so you circled slowly through and around, like about 180 degrees around the Pietà. We got back in line, and each time we tried to get in the line for one of the closer moving floors, the image of a mother holding her bruised and broken adult son drives right to the soul of any parent who loses a child for any reason, but especially due to violence. It certainly speaks to current events. And it occurred to me at that time that the allegory of mother and child is possibly what gives Christianity its particular draw. It focuses on that. And I know that as much as I'm Unitarian, when Christmas comes, I want to get the creche scene up. I'm at the store looking for figures of mother and child in the whole story. A, because it's beautiful, and B, it speaks to all of us. One of my creche sets is a cloth and very flexible creche set. And when I set it up, I put Mary holding the baby. Not the baby set out on a manger, but Mary is holding the baby. So that experience for me was very wonderful. And lastly, I want to say that God is love. A dorm mate's room at Muhlenberg College at Christmas had a big sign that said, God is love. Rules of apposition in English grammar and symmetry in math, as well as logic, tells us that if God is love, the other expression has to be true. Love is God. And I'm looking at 1 John chapter 8, verses 12 and 8. He who does not love does not know God, for God is love. And beloved, if God is so loved, we also ought to love one another. It says it pretty clearly for me, right there. And a last thought that occurred to me is that if there is a meaning for Christmas or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa or Easter or Thanksgiving or Samhain, which is All Saints' Day, it's an affirmation or a reaffirmation to the people near and dear to us that we love them. It reflects our comfort in the knowledge that many people now gone before us also loved us. And the holiday together as a family is a sign that we are continuing to pass that love on. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and I encourage anybody who might be shy about speaking on this, I believe, to talk with Allan. If you're shy about getting up here, maybe get 2 or 3 other people to share the day with you and do it. But it's a well-meaning program, and it has helped me a lot. So I had confidence to come up here and speak today. Right, and so now, let's go to our closing hymn, and that's number 34, Though I May Speak with Bravest Fire. I'll decide how many verses in a minute.
All 3.
All of them? Sure. Okay, if you could do a verse for free. All right. My closing words, I read recently of someone in the paper who did a tremendously good deed, and unfortunately I didn't record who it was, but at the end of the interview with the journalist, the person said he wanted to quote the Dalai Lama's philosophy as providing guidance for how he practices from the Dalai Lama. If you want to make people happy, practice kindness. And if you want to make yourself happy, practice kindness, unquote. A footnote to those closing words, one of the best days in my life was attending an open lecture with the Dalai Lama at Lehigh University about 10 years ago with my best friend, Martha Jokiel. Thank you, Martha. Everybody, go in peace.